So before we start adding all of our roofs, I'm going to do a little prep, and the prep I'm going to do is on these 3 roofs, roof 1, roof 3, and roof 6. And what I want to do is just take some of my ledger strip and add a little bit extra right along those ridge lines, just to give a little extra to be able to glue against. And it's just on these 3 roofs that we need to do that. So here are all my little extra ledger strips. And that'll just make life easier. It's not totally necessary, but I just like to make things easier when I can. We'll start with roof 1, which is right here in the center, and the first thing to notice is that its edges don't butt up against any of the buildings, so we can let the roof overhang on all of its sides. So I'm going to start by taking the 2 pieces of roof that I have, and in this case they're square, so it doesn't matter which way you put it together. And I'm just going to put them together with a little piece of painter's tape. And I just put that on my jeans a little bit to begin with, so it's not quite so tacky, and just lightly join those together. And then I'll take that and then put that blue tape on the upside down, and then I can bring it over here onto the building. And once I get it on the building, I'm going to take one of my joining strips and turn it inside out so it's a finishing strip, and I'm going to put it right on that peak. So I'll go ahead and do that. Then I'll take that off and give that a burnish and check to make sure that I don't have any overhang on any of the edges. So when I burnished this, I took it to the edge of my table so that I could burnish one side and then the other side, so I wouldn't ruin this nice angle that we have there. And as long as your blue tape is only in the middle, it won't interfere with anything, so you can leave it on. If it's coming within a 1/4 inch of the edges, you'd need to take that off. And then for paper, I'm going to have a black reveal in the middle as well as around the edges. You can choose to have just a folded piece of paper coming across here if you'd like. But for the ones that would have that black reveal, this is 1 7/8 inches across, so I've cut my paper 1 3/4 inches across, and then I'm going to cut it just a 1/16 shy of 1 7/8, I think, for the length on each one, and see if that gives me the reveal that I want to have at the top. Just kind of experiment and see how much you want to have there. And I'm putting my decorative paper on before I glue it up on the roof. If you want to work on it while it's up on the roof, you can go ahead, but I just find it easier to work down here on my table. And I've just stacked up a couple of my blocks so I can keep the side level that I'm working on. You can just find something around your craft room to work on it like this. So I've inked my edges and I've prepped them with score tape, and I'll put them on so that I'll have that nice little reveal around the edges and also at the ridge line. Once I have my paper on my roof, I'll run some glue on the ridge lines, and then this glue that's on the sides is kind of on the edge of those sides, and then this roof gets centered all directions. And then just put a little pressure on that until your glue gets a chance to grab. This is roof 2. We've already got the roof on there. We just need to put patterned paper on. And I'm going to have a reveal on the 2 sides. And so I'm going to cut my paper 2 7/8 wide by 2 5/8 long. And I'm going to use this striped paper. I haven't quite decided whether I'm going to end with white stripes or end with black stripes. I will make it symmetrical going across there. So I'll cut a piece and see what I think, and I'll be back to install it, and you'll see the choice I made. So this is the choice I made with white stripes on either side, and I mainly did that because of the black reveal. And then I want to train this to want to curve, so I just took a piece of dowel that I had around. You could take anything that's sturdy and round, just kind of train it to want to curve. And I started out with one piece of score tape that goes continually across the back, so I can join the side on the either side you want to start on, and this will get centered going left to right, and then you'll just have your 1/16 of an inch reveal. You should have about the same in the front and back. You can do a little dry fit here and see exactly where you'll start, and just wrap around and install that piece. So there is roof number 2 installed. Now for roof number 3, we have to watch a couple of edges. We're going to come only right up to the ridge line on the side that comes next to building 4. And then for building, around building 1 here, you can either cut a notch so that you can notch around this building right. I think you can see the orange here, notch around there, or you can just have the roof edge continue straight and come only even with the side of the building there. So either way, you need to take a measurement, and that is to, with the building closed and nice and square, take a measurement that goes down to the ridge, and up to the peak. And for me, that is 1 3/4. Now I think I'm going to notch around this building, so I'm going to measure the width of this, which we know should be an inch and a half, but I'm going to make it 1 5/8. So 1 5/8 and 1 3/4. So here's one of my side pieces, which we cut to 1 7/8. And so I'm going to start by drawing a line at 1 3/4. And if you want yours to continue straight, you'll just draw that line all the way down. I'm going to draw it part way, and then I'm going to turn and measure 1 5/8 coming the other direction. So I have that notch I'm going to cut out. Now we may need to do some fine tuning, and the only way to tell that for sure is to join the two pieces of roof together, and we'll do that again with a piece of blue tape. Now if you're like this notch, we need to flip these over because the blue tape goes on the inside. And now we have this, and we can do a little test fit. Now for me, it's working out fine left and right. That peak is coming right up to the window frame at the back, but this is just paper, so it doesn't have any thickness. If it is interfering, you can always either cut a little teeny notch there, or I personally just wouldn't worry about it. I just butt this roof right up against that building, wherever it lands. So now that if you need to do any fine tuning, if this roof isn't sitting right on the ridge, you can take this off and trim this back a little bit, either the notch or the whole edge. And I think the 1 5/8 should be a good fit for coming around building 1 over here, so that shouldn't be an issue. So when the roof is fitting correctly, have it set up there, and take a piece of your joining strip and turn it inside out. And these roofs were 3 3/8, so I cut my strip here that exact same length, and I'll install it while the roof is in this position. And then I'll take it off, burnish it, and make sure I don't have any overhang of the strip. Now for my decorative paper, I've cut each side 3 1/4 long or wide, depending on how you look at it, and a 1/16 of an inch short of 1 7/8. And I've done that for both pieces. And on this one over here, I'm just going to cut out an extra little part so that I'll have a 1/16 of an inch reveal around my notch. Now to put my glue on, I've temporarily unwrapped the building, and I'm going to put the roof on. It gets flush with the back end here next to number 4, and should be flush back in this corner right here. But before I put pressure on and allow it to dry, I will close the building back up. And I of course will check to make sure that no glue has spilled over when I do that. So I've got the building in its closed position, and I'm holding this on for a minute or two for that glue to get a chance to grab. We've of course already done the roof for building 4. I just don't have it on there so it doesn't get in the way. And now I'm just turning this around so we can work on building 5. Now building 5 is a little unique. It can't go past the back edge, and it can't go past its 2 side edges. It can only overhang in the front. So probably the best way to do this is to open this up so that you've got this kind of action going on. And then we've cut 2 pieces for our roof that are 2 1/4 and by 2 1/8 to start with. And I'm just going to join them together. I'm joining the 2 1/4 sides just with a butt joint and a piece of my blue tape. Now I've got this together, and I'm going to just try it on here, and I'm going to look at it from this direction and see, is it sitting flat or is there a gap? Now on mine I don't have a gap, but let me just show you here if I can turn this up here. You're looking right underneath that peak, and if there's a gap there, and it shouldn't have very big of a gap if you have one at all, you'll want to take this roof off and trim some little slivers off of both sides. But it seems like that measurement works out pretty well, so as long as you've constructed things pretty well, you shouldn't have an issue. So now that I've got this on here, I'm going to take a piece of my joining strip and go ahead and put that on the ridge line and get it burnished on. And then I've cut 2 pieces of pattern paper that are 2 1/8 inches wide across this dimension and a 1/16 of an inch short of 2 1/8 in this direction. So I'll go ahead and ink them and attach them to the sides of my roof. Now for this roof, I am going to remove the blue tape since it sits flat on this piece up here, and I can just run some glue on these flats and put the roof on. And just hold that roof with a little pressure until the glue grabs on. Now we can move on to building 6. Building 6, we can overhang on the 2 short sides and the ridge line that has the dormer on it, but it has to come just exactly even with the back edge because it butts up against building 1. So I'll take my 2 pieces of roof, and they have one side that is 2 1/8, and I'm going to join those 2 1/8 sides with a piece of blue tape. And then I'll finish off this ridge line just like we have before with our pieces of finishing strip. Then I've cut 2 pieces of decorative paper that are 2 inches wide going this direction, and a 1/16 of an inch shorter than 1 7/8 going in this direction. I'll go ahead and put those 2 pieces on. So I've pulled this section away so I can put the glue on without worrying about it. And when I put the roof on, I'll remember to keep it flush on this back side. And just put a little pressure on that. Now for building 7, in the front here, the 2 sides can overhang and the front can overhang, but the back side that goes against section 2 and section 6 needs to be flush with the edge. So we have 2 pieces for our roof, and they are squares, and I'm just going to join it with a piece of blue tape, just like we've done before. Put it up here on the top and finish off that ridge line. And then I've cut 2 pieces of decorative paper. They are 1 3/4 inch across this way and a 1/16 of an inch shorter than 1 7/8 in this direction. So I'll go ahead and ink them and attach them. And then I'll remove this blue tape and put some glue on these 2 surfaces, and remember to keep this back edge flush with the section 7, and the other 3 edges can overhang. And I'll just put some pressure on that. We have some little roofs to go on the dormers, and I'm going to start up here with the dormer on section 1. And there are 2 little pieces of roof that go up here, and we'll just join them with our finishing strip just like we've done for the big roofs. And then this is 3/8 of an inch wide, so I'll cut a 1/4 inch strip of this paper to use on that roof. Now joining these little pieces of awning can be tricky since they're so small, so what I've found is easier to do is just to put them on a grid line on my craft mat and allow about a 1/16 of an inch, maybe just a hair less in between them, and that'll be close enough. And then instead of using a regular joining strip that's like this, or finishing strip that's like this, I've just cut a piece of the cardstock that's the width of whatever awning I'm working on, and I'm just going to run it the length and put that and just bridge that little gap there. And you might find it easier just to work upside down. See if I can catch the shine of that. I've got it upside down, the joining strip, the cardstock's on this side, and I just placed both pieces of my awning or dormer roof on that strip of cardstock, leaving that little 1/16 of an inch gap. And then I'll trim off any excess cardstock. And you can just give that little unit a pinch to make a crease at the top. And I'm going to follow that procedure for all of my little tiny awnings, and I'll put paper on them that allows me a 1/16 of an inch reveal, just like I usually do. So here's the little awning over the front door. I used the same paper that I did for the number 4 roof. And then the little awnings over the number 3 section dormers. I used the orange paper that I used for section 1. And then for the roof on the dormer on section 6, I used the same paper. I found little scraps of that little orange checker paper that I could use for up there. Next we'll work on the roof for the extension here on the back. And we need to cut off some little triangles, and I'm going to measure in 5/8 of an inch on the front side from both corners and make a tick mark. And then I'll connect those tick marks with the back corners and cut off these 2 triangles. And here's my little dry fit. That seems to work fine. So this is the paper I've selected for the extension roof, and the first thing I'm going to do is just put it onto my roof piece with some temporary adhesive and cut out exactly around that shape. And now that I have this shape made, I'm just going to trim a 1/16 of an inch off of every edge. And then I'll ink my edges and put it on my piece of chipboard. And then I've run a bead of glue around those edges, and I'll just center this roof on top. And hold that with some pressure for a minute or 2. And then for the roof for the bay window, we'll do something similar to what we just did for the extension. I'm going to measure in 3/8 of an inch, 3/8 of an inch from each corner, and cut off those 2 angles. Now that we have our angles cut out, I'll again attach my paper with some temporary adhesive, cut it out exactly to the size of my shape, and then trim a 1/16 of an inch off of each edge. And then I've run a bead of glue around all the edges, and I'll center that roof and put it on flush to the back of section 7. And I'll just hold that with a little pressure until it dries. On the front of the building, I'm going to add 2 decorative elements. This little strip that says "Boo" several times just comes from the edging of one of the 12 by 12 papers, and I've cut that just a little bit over 2 7/8 so I could fit in my 4 boos. And then this strip of black is just shy of 5/8 inch across and 3 inches long, and I'll layer those 2 together. And then over here I'm making a little circular element, and I started with the little witch here came out of this piece of paper, and then I cut that with a 3/4 inch punch, and then I cut from the orange with writing paper a 1 inch circle, and then from black cardstock a 1 1/8 inch circle. So I'll go ahead and layer those up as well. And then the little strip of boos will go edge to edge right underneath the edge of the roof, and the little witch emblem will get centered right between the dormer and the top of that roof. And there's the front of the house with those 2 elements added.